Hi everyone, welcome back to Feather Stitch House. My name's Rebecca and each week on this channel I upload videos about embroidery and textile art to help you get creative. Now, I went on a day trip a couple of weeks ago with a friend of mine to a place in Lincolnshire that I'd never been before, and it was an absolute revelation, and I picked up a little treat while I was there, and I had it in mind that I was going to use this to make a gift for her. And as I got started, I thought that this might be something that you would like to see. So I got my camera out and have filmed the process. Now, I can't make it all in one go because it is going to take some time. I'm going to make her a book sleeve to store an A4 size journal or notebook. And I've decided that I'm going to do this in a sort of quilted patchworky slow stitch way. So today I'm just going to make the foundation fabric. I'm going to use a scrappy patchwork technique, and I'm going to use the things that I bought while I was out with her on our trip. I thought it might be a nice gift. I'm only going to use a bit of batting, I think 9 5.5-inch squares of quilting fabric and some tacking thread and some pins. That's all you'll need if you want to stitch along. So gather all your bits and pieces and let's get stitching. I have a friend whose birthday is coming up, and a couple of weeks ago we went to visit a place in Lincoln called Helmswell Cliff, and there is a huge antique centre there, and what is particularly fun about it is that there's a section that is all for haberdashery items, and so they've got lots of vintage tablecloths and trims and threads and buttons and buckles, fastenings, all sorts of stuff there. And they do these lovely little packs, slow stitch packs, and when I went there I picked one up, and what I thought I would do is create a book sleeve, journal cover. Now, I have already opened this because I couldn't wait and I've had a good old root through, but I thought I'd show you what was in it first, and then over maybe 3 or 4 parts I'm going to show you how I go about making the book cover, and then hopefully you can follow along and it gives plenty of time in between each video for you to get to the next stage. So hopefully that sounds like something you're interested in. So I'm just going to tip it all out and then we can have a mooch through and see what we've got. So get that crackly bag out of the way. So the first thing is I've got 2 embroidery threads. This, I don't know, maybe you can help me. They seem to have VA on them. I don't know what brand that is. It says it's 100% cotton and colour fast, and there are some colour numbers, so I don't know. I've got a sort of chartreuse green and a sky blue, and then I've got a bunch of buttons. These are just sort of resin buttons in reds and blues and greens. So they're not the most exciting buttons I've ever seen, have to be honest. I've got another thread here that is a sort of darker, like cool green. It's like a fur green, and then there's like a linen sort of colour taupe. So I quite like that colour combination. It's not really one that I would ever have put together myself, so I quite like that. I've also got this really cute reel of machine cotton. There were loads of these actually. I don't know what brand. Ivy, there we go. Ivy machine cotton. It's almost too cute to break into. You know I'm going to. So I've got that as well. And then let's have a look. I've got some wide ribbon here. Let's have a look at what size it is. It is 1.5 inches or just shy of 4 centimetres. So that's in that lovely sort of foresty green, which I really like. Got this lovely Not a massive fan of lace on the whole, but this is just lovely. This is like a crochet lace. It's cotton. That's going to take colour, I think. So if I did want to dye it, I reckon I could. I think that would work quite nicely. So I've got that as well. I've got this. This is really not me, but I think in a small amount that could look quite nice. I've got this sort of ribbon trim. I don't know what you call this. It's got this sort of metallic braid around it, and then this almost fluffy ribbon, like chenille, I suppose, is woven through it. Very blingy. Not really me. If we can make that work in a way that I can cope with, we'll be doing very, very well indeed. I've got some of this. This is like tape, so that is definitely ribbon. This is more like webbing or tape. And see, I quite like the way they packaged that. They've just cut a little bit and made a loop for it. And it's got this, I hope that the camera's picking it up, it's got a sort of almost like watermark quality to it. Like it. Looks glittery on camera. It isn't glittery, but it does have a bit of a sheen to it, so I like that. Got this really cute trim. I love that. My kind of colour, and a lovely little bit of trim. So I've got a length of that I can make use of that's in a bit of a tangle. There we go. That's unleashed it. So I'm sure I can find a way of incorporating that. Loving that. Oh, another button. I've also got some blue ribbon, so this is similar width to that. It's like a satin ribbon. It is exactly the same width. This one feels a little bit thicker, so that's like half. It's like that is satin ribbon, that's webbing, and this is halfway between. So we've got two ribbons there, and then we've got a bunch of fabric. So first of all, I've got this little handkerchief that is really cute with that little crochet, like a little lacy edge, and all around the edge is this sort of lacy edging. Let me see if I can bring this up to the camera. There we go. That's really nice, really pretty. Got my hand behind it so you can see the holes, and then you've got this trim all around the edge, which is really nice. That feels kind of linen-y. Hopefully you can see the weave of the fabric there. It's the kind of thing that I'd imagine somebody received as a gift and thought was too special to use. So beautifully pressed. So we have that. And then we've got a pack of fabrics, and I think these are probably cut from pillowcases. They've got that quality about them. So we've got two pieces of each, except for this one, which I only seem to have one of. So I've got one with like, they look a bit like hyacinths to me. The leaves don't look right for hyacinths. Maybe they're kind of hydrangea, but little floral. Then we've got this pale blue leafy pattern. Got a bit of green. I like the fact that some of the greens have been brought in. Got a ticking stripe there. These all feel like cottons to me, and if you wanted to check, you just hold it to a flame, and if it melts, it's not cotton. If it doesn't melt, it's cotton. So we've got that one there. Then we've got this very vibrant, that's properly 1980s, early 90s, that I can totally remember patterns like that being everywhere. And then we've got this cute little blue stripe with these bold red flowers, which is why I've got these two red buttons. I think it's really well put together pack, I think, like a slow stitch pack. I think this is so well put together. Oh, we appear to have 4 of those. That's a bit bizarre. 4 of those and only 1 of those? I don't know. So that's our fabric. I also have a little embroidery that I did because I've got to put in some embroidery. Now this was a free kit that came with Love Embroidery magazine, and I stitched it up on a train journey that we went on together, and I thought that might be a nice addition. I imagined doing some reverse applique over the top and then cutting out a hole to reveal the embroidery. I just thought it went with the colour scheme quite nicely. But that's my kit anyway, and I just thought it was really lovely. I think it cost £8 maybe. Some really lovely things in here, and most of them are genuine vintage items rather than things that look vintage. So I think we've got plenty here to have a go at something with. So what I want to do is make an A4 size book sleeve. So if you are watching in the US and you don't really use A4 as a size, it's this size. It's just over 30 centimetres tall and about 22 wide, and in inches that is 8.5 wide and 12-ish, just shy of 12 inches. So it's that size of book, and I want to make it generously enough so that this is my notebook. So I'm going to make it to fit this. I want it to be suitable to fit a thicker notebook or a thinner notebook, so I want to try and make it a little bit adjustable as well. So let's clear the decks and I'll show you what I'm going to do first. So I've got a good old piece of leftover batting, and I've taken my grey ironing mat away because I've lifted my camera up and this doesn't actually fit on my ironing mat. I need a much bigger one, clearly. So I've cut a piece of batting. I didn't measure it. I will measure it because it'll give you an idea of the size that you need. I'll show you how I did it in a second. So this is 60 centimetres by 35, and I've made it a bit deep to allow some shrinkage because I want to slow stitch this, and when you do lots of stitching it tends to pull in the size of your panel a little bit, and I wanted to give some allowance for that. So I think this will end up at about 33, which will be enough for me to be able to do some stitching at the top, trim it back and square it off. So that just gives me a little bit of room to do that. So the way I measured it was I cut a long strip and then I tucked the side in by about 5 centimetres, like that, maybe a little bit more. Again, I want some allowance for shrinkage in as well from side to side. So I tucked it in the back cover, closed the book, and then I folded it round, opened up the front cover and tucked it in, and then just cut roughly. I've got little notes everywhere here. Just cut it roughly. It doesn't need to be square at this point, and hopefully you can see I've got a couple of centimetres top and bottom to allow for a little bit of shrinkage. So that's how I've sized it, and then we can work out the construction of the book sleeve as we go along. So what I'm going to do as a starting point is do some arranging of fabrics. So I'm going to save my trims. So I'll count my embroidery as a trim. I'm going to keep my trims to one side for the time being, and I'm only going to use these fabrics, I think. Let's just stick with this, and I'm hoping that I'm going to have enough fabric left to make a second book sleeve, and then we'll have a similar version. So if I lay these out, I'm not going to leave them in big chunks like this. Let's see if we can just get away with using one of each. This is not how I'm laying it out. I just want to check how much fabric is going to work. So I can have 2 of those. That almost works, doesn't it? Because if I chop that in half, that'll fit in there. So I do need a little bit more fabric. Let me have a quick mooch and see what I can find. Well, that took no time at all. I found a couple of fabrics in my stash that I think work really well. So this, I believe, is an IKEA fabric from maybe 10 years ago, and I got a metre of it and I've worked my way through it, and I think we could do with picking up some more red, and I quite like that it kind of picks up the pinks from this one and this one and draws in some of the colours, and it's a really similar green to the greens that are on the other fabric. So I think that one works quite well. I think we'll use it sparingly, but that one works as well. And then I've got this blue spot fabric, so I think that one works quite well and sort of mutes it slightly. It's a more sort of muted, much more like that fabric, so I think that's a really good match. So what do we do? I'm going to have a quick think and then I'll come back and show you what I'm going to do. If you've been watching regularly, do you remember the other week I said what I needed was a rotating cutting mat? I treated myself to one. It was not expensive, but this is it. It is already totally transforming my experience of patchwork and quilting. So good investment. I think it was £10. I'll see if it's still available and I'll put a link in the description below. I bought this. It wasn't sent to me or anything. It's by the Quilted Bear, and it came with a rotary cutter as well. Haven't tried this one out, so let's try it and I'll give you some feedback. So I bought the mat and this came free. I'm 90% sure the 2 together, it was a special offer. I'm sure the 2 together was only £10, but I might be making that up. So I'll, I will check it. I'll put a link in the description if I can find it. Let's see how we get on. So what I'm going to do, I've decided, is a version of Crazy Patchwork. I've seen a spate of videos recently about Victorian Crazy Patchwork, where you just cut out random shapes and overlay them and turn them back or leave them raw. But this is the stack and whack version. So this way we are going to get some squares because we're working on squares. I've cut out of my 2 extra fabrics. I know I should iron them. I'll iron them. I can hear you shouting. Let's get the creases out. So if we're going to do something, let's do it properly. I'm so excited to get going. That's my problem. This is my true self coming out here. I'm just really impatient. When it comes to the prep work, I'm terrible at prep. I just want to get stitching because sewing is the fun. This bit is just necessary. But if you prepare well, you're going to get a good result. So that one's slightly bigger because it was crumpled. The squares are cut roughly to 5.5 inches. So I'm gonna start by squaring them off so they're all the same size, because after that it doesn't really matter what size they are. It just matters that they're all the same, and that's how they're going to sit together. The difference I'm going to add to the instructions in the book, which I haven't read, I've just looked at the pictures and the diagrams, and I'm guessing from this point, just doing it intuitively. This will be a really good test of this rotary cutter if it can get through all of this. There's a lot of layers here. Wonder if it can. I might have to stand up. yeah, it doesn't matter what size they are as long as they're all the same. So this is going to be our starting point. So I've got my steel edge ruler here and I'm just going to square them off. So this is stage 1, by the way, of making this book sleeve. Right. Oh, that's different. So normally on my Fiskars one, I push the blade down, but this time we pull the guard back. That's interesting. Oh, it's super sharp. That's actually really nice to use. Look at that. Nice straight edge. And then we do our little magic spin. Look at that. Oh, there's so much satisfaction there. Right, let's just pick a point. It's fine. If you are an experienced quilter, please don't come for me. This is not going to be machined and it's not going to need to match up precisely because we're going to use raw edges. That's what I was saying. I forgot what I was talking about. So the difference I'm going to add to the instructions in the book, which I haven't read, is that this is going to be raw edge because we're going to add lots of stitching and I want that sort of weathered look to it. That's cut beautifully. Really impressed. Really impressed. It's not quite as ergonomic as the Fiskars one. I really like that the Fiskars handle is curved. It's really comfortable to use and it's a soft grip, so it's easy to hold on to. This has got soft grip bits as well, but the handle being straight I find a little bit less comfortable, but that might be my arthritis. So I will be using this. It's great. I'm really impressed with the way that cut. So what we do now is we make some kind of random cuts. So the book says to cut it into 5. We've got more than 5 pieces, so I'm just going to do it fairly randomly. So I always want to be cutting in a straight line. Let's do one cut there. There we go. And we want these to intersect a little bit. Let's pop a cut there. And do I want to cut that any smaller? I think that's quite small. Let's put a cut here. Like that, and I'm stopping before I get to that. So I've cut it into 5 and let's just see how it goes. So this is where the magic happens. So if I start over this side, I can show you what we're going to do. So we're going to take the first block or the first fabric off this top block and take it to the bottom like that. And on this piece we're going to take the top 2 blocks and put them at the bottom. You see what's happening? Now we're going to take the top 3 blocks and put them to the bottom. Then we're going to take the top 4 blocks and put them to the bottom. And now the top 5 blocks, 3, 4, 5, and put them to the bottom. And suddenly we've got a crazy patchwork block. Basically, as I take a piece of fabric off the top, I'm going to reveal a new crazy patchwork block underneath it. And so we should have different blocks all over this book cover. So here we go. What I need are some applique pins. So let's get these out. and I'm going to lay my first piece at the top and pin it. Just going to put a pin in the middle for the time being. I'm going to work clockwise all the time so that it helps me keep track. Now I'm going to overlap them ever so slightly. So I've just moved that ever so slightly, maybe half a centimetre, not even. Maybe an eighth of an inch over the previous piece. Because what I don't want is for wadding to show through. So that one goes on there. Then actually I want the edges first. So we can pop that one down there, just overlapping ever so slightly. So if you wanted to do crazy patchwork, you might have to turn under. So normally with crazy patchwork, you turn under and overlap so you don't have raw edges, but I want the raw edges. So we're going to pop that one there. If you can hear lots of noise, by the way, my neighbours are saying goodbye to some guests very loudly. Clearly they've had a good visit. There we go. And then our last one goes here. And if they don't line up, that's fine by me. Because as long as there's no batting showing, I don't mind about jaggedy bits like I've got there. There we go. That's our first block. How cool is that? Love it. Right, so now we've got, that's not right. Let's just do a little bit of jiggery pokery here. Put that underneath. There we go, that gives us a different block. Now what we're going to do first, before we lay out our next block, is rotate our cutting mat. So if you don't have a rotating cutting mat, you can just slide your blocks around on a table. So now when we lay our next block down, it's going to look very different because all of the pieces are going to be in a different orientation. So here we go. We'll put our first one down. Maybe I need to rotate it twice. And then no, that's, that's gonna put everything next to each other, and now I've knocked my pins over. Maybe that's better. Yeah, let's go with that, and then we're not going to have the same patterns next to each other. So I've rotated it 3 times. So here we go. Let's put our piece down. So I hope you're getting the idea. We're doing a stack and whack book cover. Now this is where you're going to have some straight lines in between, but we can break that up. It's not the end of the world to me. We're going to break up these straight lines so they're a little bit less obvious. This is where our bits of embroidery come in, and our braid and any other. I think we're going to have bits of this spare so we can break up some of those straight lines without very much difficulty at all. So tiny bits of overlap. Oh, I love it already. I just love it. How gorgeous. I hope she likes it. I think she will. I don't know about you, I find that there are some people in my life who would be completely nonplussed with a handmade gift, and other people in my life who would think it's the best thing they've ever received. And I love the fact that people are different. But I couldn't do a gift like this for everybody, I don't think. Now, I'm making this because I know she journals. I hope she's not watching, but if she is, hopefully she'll get really excited. I know she journals, and I think this is going to be a really nice way of helping her feel that even when she switches to a new journal, there's some continuity. So we've got a little bit of matching fabric here, which I'm not going to worry too much about, but what we could do is just take that to the bottom and choose one that doesn't match. So because we've got more fabrics than there are blocks, pieces rather, in our block, so we've only got 5 pieces per block, we've got 9 fabrics, so we can do a little bit of playing around. And if you put them down in a slightly different order, this time my sort of almost triangular block is going to be sitting on the top, and I quite like that. Do you know, I think I've done that backwards. I have. Oh dear, look, that's upside down. Right, we'll fix that in a minute. Let's get a different fabric. Pop that one in. That's going to be our fabric that breaks everything up then, because I've cut it with the wrong side of the fabric up, so all the pieces are back to front now. It's all right. It's not the end of the world. We'll make it work. Now, doesn't that look pretty? Ah, love that. Really love it. So, what I am noticing is that a couple of these pieces that were cut the wrong way around actually flip quite nicely. So this piece here and this piece here flips, and although this angle's not right, it doesn't matter because I can't see the wadding through. So I've just used them anyway, and where it didn't flip nicely, I have just used it anyway, just for the sake of those flashes of red. So I'm not too worried about it. Just wondering whether I can switch out one of these pieces somewhere and replace it. I don't think I need to, do I? Maybe I need to pull down. It's helpful looking at it through the camera because I can see what the balance is like. And that one, see, that one flips over quite nicely. So this angle's wrong, but it won't matter. And I think I want to put some bit of blue spot missing. I think I'm going to put it over there actually, so that can stay where it is. So I'm just looking at it through the screen. It obviously, not everybody is making this using a webcam. So take a picture. That's my advice. Take a picture and look at it, and you can check the balance. See, that already feels so much better to me. So much better. I think that's pretty well balanced. I'm not sure about these two together, actually, now I've said that. Maybe this one needs switching out with something different. Aha, this piece that I took out, oh, that's loads better. So the piece that I took out from up here, or down here, wherever it was, works really nicely there. Now I've got this strip along the bottom that doesn't have anything in it, and so what I'm going to do is just piece in these extra few little pieces of fabric just along the bottom. I don't need to worry about going all the way to the edge right the way across, and I can cut these pieces down even further if I need to. Let's get that in there to just fill in any gaps, because some of this will be trimmed off. So we're just going to pop these in down here. And isn't it clever, because we kind of barely notice the straight lines, and where we have got straight lines we could actually go in with extra little bits and just pop them over the top just to break up those horizontals and verticals. It's only going to take a couple of pieces added in, and we can do that with our trims and things like that. So I'm not worried about it at all. Where can I go? I'm worried that I'm covering up that little flash of red there, so I'm just going to bring that to the front. So this is the layout then for my book sleeve, and what I'm going to do is just run some lines of running stitch just in a machine cotton. So I've got some machine cotton that I use for a lot of tacking, and you can do it in a number of different ways. You could just run this through a sewing machine and just put a line of stitching every 2 inches maybe, and catch it all down like that so that you can take the pins out. You could meticulously tack around the edges of each shape. I'm going to do something probably in between. So I like to find the most efficient way of stitching. The first thing I'm going to do is stitch along the centre, and I'm just going to do a running stitch. So big basting or tacking stitches, because I can either take them out or leave them in, it's fine. So I'm going to go along this centre line, and that will catch down all the pieces that sit along it. I'm not taking the pins out just yet. But if I just go along this line where the first line of blocks sits against the second line, I'm going to catch essentially all the blocks on this top row, all the pieces along that bottom edge, and it'll just hold them in place. Now I think tacking stitches are part of the story. I love the story of projects, so I don't tend to cover up the backs of, if I do any work in hoops, I don't tend to cover up the back because it's part of the story, it's part of the narrative. But some people hate visible tacking stitches, and that's fine as well. I should say as well that if you want to, at this point, you can put a backing fabric on to cover up that raw batting. I'm going to do it at a later stage. But you could essentially make a quilt sandwich at this point. And when you're tacking, you'll be tacking together all of the layers. I'm going to do it at a later stage because I want to protect the stitching. So I'm going to stitch on this in the next episode. And I don't want the ends of threads and things like that to be exposed in the final book sleeve. So if I make a quilt sandwich now, when I stitch onto it, all my thread ends are going to be showing on the back, and that means that when the book is replaced or when notes are put inside, those stitches are going to be sort of at risk, and I don't want them to be pulled or knocked out of shape. So on this occasion, although I think the back of the work is part of the work, I'm not going to leave it exposed because purely for a practical reason. But these tacking stitches won't come out, they'll stay in. So I'm going to leave as much of the story of this piece of work in place as I possibly can, whilst preserving the usefulness of it, if that makes sense. So we'll just do it step by step. Haven't quite yet worked out how I'm going to do the backing, because it needs to be stitched down more than just the edge, but I'll get there when we come to that point. So just as usual, I'm kind of taking some basic principles and making the rest up as I go along. So you get the idea. I could potentially now take out all the pins in these pieces that I've caught, but I don't want to because I don't want them to be flapping around. So I've stitched across the centre. I'm going to do the same. So there's going to be a double layer of stitching here. I'm going to do the same on the next block down. So I'm going to go maybe ½ inch away and stitch along here, and then I'll do double layers down these lines here. Probably will go across the centre in 2 lines. So this long line here, find it on each block, it's here again. I'll probably do the same there, and that way each piece will have stitching on all 4 sides of it, and that means that everything's kind of secure. So I'm not going to be doing my slow stitching with pins in it that I am likely to stab myself on. So I'll do that, and then I'll come back and show you where we're up to. Okay, so here is my panel so far. I ended up, just for complete transparency, I ended up going round each piece in turn, and it maybe took about an hour and a half, something like that. Just very rough, loose stitches, and the next stage will be to add some embellishments and then add some stitching. We'll look at that in the next video. So this is what's known as the stack and whack approach. You can just about see the blocks. So there's 1, there's 2 and 3 and 4, and because we've rotated the blocks, there isn't that sort of visual repeat, so the blocks are kind of lost in there. That's another one, another one, another one, another one there, and then I've just pieced across the bottom with any leftover bits and just some trimmings. There's a tiny little space there that doesn't have any fabric over it, but we've got all our braids and trims. So I've got all my stuff for this project in a basket. My threads are in there and everything, and we will come back to that next time. So I hope you've enjoyed that first part of making a book sleeve, and I look forward to getting started with the next stage of this project. If you want another patchwork project, I'll link a video here, and I'll put something interesting for you to have a go at down here as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!